special.
Although we've seen a couple Zagara plays tonight, it seemed a little unexpected. China busting it out. Actually hadn't minded it too much, so is that something Taiwan wants to pull out? I wouldn't mind that at all right now.
Well, let's find out where we are going. Now, remember, the bans were Infernal Shrines and Sky Temple. We just played on Dragonshire. Cursed Hollow will be the battleground that we are moving into. Now, you did allude to Zagara slightly. I don't know if we're going to see it from Taiwan. Now, of course, there is SPT with the Zagara gameplay. But I feel like this is a battleground that if you do want to play that split push meta, this is the one where Abathur does stand out. We have yet to see him this tournament, but it is one that we see more often in the Western sides.
You said Abathur, and we have this beautiful studio here, and I look over, and directly over your left shoulder, you can't see it because it's behind you. There's Abathur right there on the wall, and I'm like, all right, there's some Abathur. Maybe that's a sign. It's here. We're late into the evening, and Trixler says Abathur, and there's an Abathur peeking at me right over his shoulder.
I mean, it's getting late for us. It's 5 in the morning. I'm ready for crazy.
I'm pretty sure it's like 6 or 6.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. All right, so Cursed Hollow is the battleground. Let's move into it. Now, our first ban of the game will be going over to TFC. What do they elect to get rid of? Commonly, you get rid of some sort of global you don't want to deal with. Falstead's usually the go-to. Dahaka can be okay on this battleground, but Falstead a little bit more priority just because of the soaking potential, the late game potential, and also the Mighty Gust because of boss control. So let's find out what the ban will be here for TFC.
Maybe it's going to be the reverse. They're going to try and pull that against SPT. Now, I actually wouldn't be surprised. I was going to say wouldn't be surprised if they ended up banning Dahaka, but they banned Zarya. Let's see if TFC says, look, you played the global game against us. We're going to do the exact same thing. Because I got a feeling, like, Dahaka's a tricky first pick. All right, Tassadar, it fits, the kind of the model. But now, you normally don't want to first pick Dahaka unless you have certain strategies, but Vala Malfurion, man, this is moving quickly.
Mm-hmm. This is the automatic reaction. Usually when you get a Tassadar, you take away the Vala, then you get the Malfurion because it's obviously the best support after that, just being able to have the control in the fights. The innervates, of course, heals. Everything is just great with Malfurion, and then you have the wonderful God Heroic Twilight Dream. Now, looking at our second and third slot, TFC shouldn't worry too much about that Vala. They are infamous for playing different auto attackers. Zul'jin could be a possible pickup here. I actually wouldn't mind them picking up the second and third slot because we've seen Zul'jin bans in the past already against Taiwan because everyone's done their research.
Well, they have a plethora of heroes that they could fit into this slot. Again, Tassadar, when we talk about certain battlegrounds that if you don't get that true value out of Tassadar with one of those auto attack heroes or somebody that can really pump up his value, then this isn't necessarily one of his better battlegrounds. Yes, he can stall out, and there's the Lucio to pair with the Tassadar.
Okay, ETC, Lucio, so we're obviously going to be empowering an auto attacker. There's that Zul'jin ban. I really wish we'd have gotten that earlier. I don't mind ETC actually going through if you want to run the double support, which, everyone has their qualms with double support, but with the Tassadar and Lucio, okay, it makes sense. So I would grab Zul'jin there, and if ETC gets banned out, you just pick up Murden or Hard Engager later on, because you're obviously here because you want to get your auto attacker to run. So sadly, Zul'jin gets banned out. We won't be seeing that. There is always the option of Raynor, but gosh, man, Jimmy is one of those hard heroes to pull out. So there is Dahaka with the ban, and now our third and fourth pickup is available for SPT.
They are just flat out flying through this draft, Trixler, and there's the Zagara. Now, here's the thing about Zagara. Zagara against Tassadar. Tassadar has something called Oracle that reveals creep tumors, plus his Psystorm is not that, mana intensive, and you can clear that. So depending on how lanes match up, Zagara might not get that early game value or that early game vision, and then later in the game. Cursed Hollow is one of those maps that you can get through the forts, and it looks really good doing it as Zagara. But when you get late game and you're pushing, if you opt to run Nidus, obviously, if you opt to run Nidus and you get about 3/4 of the way through the battleground, if you can get that far, if your creep gets cleared up, if your Nidus gets cleared up, Zagara's value diminishes drastically at that point. And it's something that we've seen a lot of teams in the past, particularly last summer. There were a lot of teams, especially in NA, that fell short when it came to the late game when they had Zagara cops.
Yeah, Zagara is one of those heroes that you're kind of hoping that you set yourself up well when you move into the mid game. They do have boss control, they have Vala damage. I do think ETC is already solid here for TFC to handle Zagara pressure. You just grab Echo Pedal, get that stage dive, and you can force fights at any point. They're going to move into Illidan and Greymane. So we now have a dive comp available. I, in fact, believe that ETC will be the one to deal with the pressure coming their way, and they'll move into stage dive. Ariel the last pickup here. Double support Zagara solo Tyrael with Vala carry.
Mouth Ariel. Mouth Ariel is something we saw in the Taiwan finals.
It was wasn't that a first and second pick, right?
It was against TFC. It was not pretty. This is a full dive comp from TFC.
Yep.
And I'm all for going in. This, if you, depending on where you fall with your heroics and where it falls, I think if you go against the Knight of Zagara, this is a hunt game. And I think that in a lot of ways it's a hunt game, is that you can mitigate a lot of that lane control. You can find the picks that you need. If you're an all-in comp, that's fine, but you also have to find ways to get picks. Illidan can do that, but you have to find ways to. So I think this is probably a hunt game, especially if you go against the Knight of Zagara. The Knight of Zagara is actually terrified of hunt Illidans. Like, it's just like, look at me, I'm pushing a lane. The minute that you get vision from one of your minions, it's like you hear that sound and you're like, I'm in trouble.
It's actually interesting because I see a world where now we can actually sell Devouring Maul over Nidus Network because of the point that you just brought up. Although Devouring Maul on this battleground is very hard for Zagara to pull off. One, she just doesn't do very well if pressure comes her way, and they have Illidan Greymane that could chase her down. Granted, you have the Sanctification and the Aegis to deal with that, but suddenly it becomes this weird tug of war of where ETC is looking at Zagara, waiting for her to pick a heroic, because if we have her go the Nidus Network, you have to go for Sage Dive, I think, to match it, or you can have Illidan with the Hunt to do so. But Zagara also looks at ETC, and if he picks Mosh Pit, then suddenly you go Devouring Maul, and you have a setup automatically to move in for an engagement. So this is a bit of a weird thing. This is kind of a flashback to, what, 2015, 2016 Heroes of Storm?
Malf Ariel, though, with a Zagara who doesn't necessarily put a ton of damage out. I mean, you can.
I mean, that's all Vala. Like,
it is all Vala, but what happens when Vala just has an Illidan like on top of her the entire time? Like, guys, I'm trying to like auto attack and move, but this is starting to like wear on me. You have double support at that point, but you're not killing anything at that point. You have Tassadar shields on potentially Illidan or Greymane, preferably Greymane, I think, at this point, because Illidan has that self-sustain. And if you're not putting out that serious damage, Twilight Dream is going to be your saving grace.
Yeah, and there's also the possibility of Greymane moving in. I think what does work out is that Zagara can drop a Hydra on Tassadar and try to get him melted down slightly to the point where he can't chase with Illidan and bring out those shields, and then you turn around and drop the Root and drop the Rain of Vengeance. I think Rain of Vengeance is the pick here. And then you can burn down Illidan, but you're right. The pressure coming towards SPT can be very difficult. However, I will say, based on what we saw last game, it seems like SPT has their entire team fight coordination based well. They understand what they want to do in fights, and they understand how to execute much better than TFC.
My favorite thing about this is because based on skill alone, I think especially after that first game, you'd expect Super Perfect Team to take the victory. And now we look at Malf Ariel, and if that wins, I can't wait to talk to Dread afterwards. Double support, Malf Ariel. It's not something that we see too often.
I mean, I'd rather Malf Ariel with Vala here than Gul'dan, because we've seen Malf Ariel with Gul'dan, and that's interesting, you know, to me. So we'll see if Vala can be empowered here to handle the pressure coming her way. It will be a Greymane. It will be an Illidan chasing down Vala. And normally if you have one solo support, I'd say, all right, well, that Vala's toast. But with the double support, they may have a chance here to actually hold on. So it's all going to come down to interactions. I also want to talk about boss control. Boss control is a little bit more favorable, I think, towards the red team, SPT here, with the ability to, one, have Roots, to have the Holy Ground later on at 16, and Sanctification, and potentially Devouring Maul. I still think that the Nidus Network is the way to go, but they can handle boss control. And in the past, in EU, I don't know if this is going to bleed over here to China, but we have seen the Hungering Arrow build, and you focus on just controlling bosses, so they do have a composition that can go that route.
You actually bring up a really good point, just due to the fact that when you have Illidan, you start to run into, well, wait a minute, he has evasion, so it mitigates auto attack damage, but it doesn't mitigate ability damage.
Well, we'll see how this will shake out in game number 2 here in the series. We'll be right back here with the Battleground Chris Solid. Both teams fighting for their tournament life. SPT currently up 1-0 over their opponents, TFC. Here is TFC on the far left, sporting what I would call the diviest of comps. Illidan, Greymane, ETC, looking to get on the back line of SPT here, who is showing off this new Chinese meta that we are apparently going to be seeing all weekend, Zagara, in the mix-up.
All I gotta say is Misaka goes from playing Zeratul to Ariel in 2 different games.
Misaka God.
That's not something you say that often. I'm just gonna point that out, but I just, you know, you can study, you can prepare as a caster, and you can look at every single thing in the world, and then something like this happens, and you're just like, you know, I don't know what's happening.
I kind of wish, and this might be crazy, that we had Searing Light instead of level 1 for Ariel, just because Illidan's going to be naturally on the back line, and being able to get heals and slight damage in, anything that's helpful against Illidan to help with actually dealing with that pressure coming your way, as well as Greymane. However, we will be going Q build Ariel, but I am slightly sad there that we won't get slight damage here from Ariel.
And sometimes that can make all the difference. The roots are going to keep Illidan in place, and he is going to be roaming around with, and you can see there, that's going to be easy clear up of that creep, but he's going to be roaming there with Tassadar. Probably is going to be his best friend this game.
Valla currently grabbing the level 1 auto attack, so going to keep moving in with that speed, continuing to help out the aggression. Ariel will just be consistently babysitting this Valla. It's interesting to watch Malf and Zagara on the top lane, but when you think about it, Innervate constantly allows you to keep spamming out those Hydras and those Roaches, so that does force 2 members to come deal with you. Could you imagine Zagara in a 2-on-1 scenario against anyone? That would be a dead lane and dead turret. So suddenly TFC is forced to deal with the pressure coming their way, which does open up Valla to be strong in the bottom lane.
This top lane is basically going to be the battle of full health bars. I mean, Illidan heals himself up. Shields are going to be there, although Garnet Devil taking a little bit of damage, but he's just going to shield himself, eat that, make sure the towers don't take any damage. Illidan will continue to go in, basically do nothing because Malf will just heal it up. And the back and forth will continue.
Yeah, both teams should be relatively healthy, but the push power is much stronger for Zagara. You see the lane just keeps putting in, she keeps working in vainly whenever she can. The shields will be enough to hold for a slight amount of time, but SPT should slightly take over that lane. Now the bottom lane is where the main trouble is. Valla working in those auto attacks constantly should be able to handle the Greymane pressure, and there's no real major point where Greymane can kind of all in that Valla. With Ariel's Attainment Strike, heals popping out, the Q being in at the same time, SPT kind of has the strong early lane.
Something we're not seeing from either team here is neither of them going. I don't know what happened here, but Tyrael's going to be going down, and that is our first blood of the game.
He had to have died to turret. There's no way that ETC bodies out at Tyrael. Tyrael's one of the best in just kind of holding a lane and not dying, so must have had a weird misplay happening there in the middle lane. SPT will lose out 1 member as ETC will walk away as victor.
Tell it to the rock god.
That's right. Well, first tribute spawning in the next 10 seconds. It will be in the very bottom for our teams. Now, notice nobody actually filled away from the lanes at 2 minutes to grab the Giants, which is a typical play. Instead, we had our lanes consistently being pushed in. So now we have 3 members in the bottom right. We have our Ariel and Tyrael, the Angel Bros, hanging out with Valla in the back right to work in their damage. Yeah,
I think they're more than content to basically give that up and just 2-man top lane, and everybody just kind of pokes around here at the bottom. I don't think anybody's just going to overwhelm the other person. You know, ETC obviously kind of has that power slide, but follow-up damage is Greymane, and he's just down here casually clearing waves. They're just going to have a standstill for a little bit.
Yep, constant back and forth between our teams. Nobody in the middle, actually. The minions will push for SPT, and so that should be some experience denied eventually for TFC, but again, just the back and forth action between our 2 teams. Valla has decided to get aggressive with their friend Ariel here and start working on those turrets, which will be helpful. But yeah, this is a matchup that not one really wins unless ETC gets a god tier engage and Greymane's able to burst someone down.
One thing that we do have is Malfurion actually went back to Earth and left that top lane and instantly went to the middle. Gonna try and soak 7, I believe, before he rotates down. And right now, Kite being interrupted by KT4. We're going to see if Malf rotates down, but Tassadar is basically mirroring that as both of them are middle,
Tyrael got it.
Finally.
So TFC put in a hard engage on Valla, intending to kill her off. Misaka was able to keep the heals up, and that allowed Tyrael to sneak away that tribute. So 1 tribute has been awarded to SPT, but both teams are still even on experience, 7.5 to 7.5. Zagara actually hasn't made too much headway in that top lane. with Malfurion rotating to the middle. So oddly enough, even though I expected a little bit more pressure in that top lane, Zagara just hasn't had the chance to break on through.
Yeah, there's just not a lot you can do. I mean, you get that extra movement speed on the creep. So when you have somebody like Illidan on you, sometimes it can help you kind of distance yourself, you know, keep that, although Greymane ended up being collapsed upon in the bottom lane. So the unexpected continues to happen here in this early game.
Well, Zagara actually did much better than I thought she would. They actually got the entire wall there and a couple of turrets, so they just eked out an experience lead, 8.5, a tribute in the top right, but this is actually very brilliant laning, in my opinion. You have the great aggressive play in the top lane with that Malfurion. You have Fallen and Ariel, which is very hard to kill, especially in the early game. There's no one to even set up a gank on them there, with ETC consistently having floating between the middle and the bottom, so SBT just continues to take their advantages. The second tribute being grabbed, and SBT just has full control of the battleground, especially with taking out a fort here. And with this fort being taken away, when they get around 9.5, 9 3/4, and they have a 2 out of 3 tribute, they can maybe make a boss play.
Yeah, it's a very threatening position, because when you talk about that, so long as they can continue to soak, but Misaka just trying to get out of this alive. But if you can continue to soak while making that play for that boss, you can now have boss threat, and then you can't necessarily grab that tribute into a level 10, then you have a boss pushing simultaneously as Pa is going to walk away. Man, this is just a deadly combo down there.
Yeah, boy, continuing with the aggression. Malfurion in the middle will get the kill with a Twilight Dream with the aid of Kite. Now, what does SPT do with this major play they have? I wouldn't mind them starting a boss in the top right and then grabbing it with the aid of the Curse. They've just taken out an Illidan. They have a full half-level experience available for them. They also have, what is that, Nidus Network. They have so many tools here to get a massive push going, but instead they're just going to grab the Tribute and get a Curse. I think that's a slight misplay, but still they're able to push in the middle lane and start moving towards forts.
Yeah, you know, I think they definitely could have done a bit more with it, just like you said, but they're starting to build themselves up a little bit of a lead. They've only gotten 2 kills, but the amount of pressure they've been able to put on has allowed them to obtain this lead and the first Curse. They're just going to push here in the middle. But again, Nidus Network, will we be seeing the hunt as level 10 is here? Illidan?
Haven't shown yet. We're waiting to find out. Archon Curse Bullet stage dive. Yep, and there's going to also be the sound barrier. So our teams have identified all the heroics except for Illidan. Illidan sitting in the top right corner in position to go for a hunt if the opportunity does provide itself. However, he is forced to go deal with the pressure heading towards his fort in the top left from the Curse, which has allowed SPT to get aggressive. They are chasing Lucio down.
There's just not a lot they can do. I mean, they continue to push in. Pa goes in, and they're just healed right back up. Ariel, Malf are keeping them alive, but you got to wonder, like, when a team fight will finally break out and for TFC to actually try and take that. Because so far, it's just a matter of they stay healed up, they continue to posture up. Bala is absolutely dominating every lane that she's in.
He's up here in the top left. Stage dive has been popped. Here comes the hunt. They charge onto Ariel. She is in the back right. She uses Aegis after the cleanse has been used. Kite being focused down. There's the sanctification. ETC looking for a takedown. Big Twilight Dream. And all meanwhile, Zagara's in the bottom right lane. If SPT can survive here, they should be fine. But Illidan glides in for a takedown.
Yeah, they only got 1, but sometimes that's all it takes. So a good play there, but as you said, Zagara continuing to put that pressure in there, keeping their 1-level lead. But if you can continue to get picks, as we see the hunt is already back up here in a few seconds, so Zagara cannot pressure too far. That's the thing. We'll see if Zagara, here in a few minutes, and when we start to get to that 10, 12, 15-minute mark, if it makes it that far, if you can get that same type of value pushing up that lane now that the threat of the hunt is there.
Boss call has been made. We're going to have 2 members already in the top right. Bala moving towards it. Ariel still in the middle. Tassadar scouting that out kind of indicates, okay, they might not be doing a boss here. However, now it gets to the point where, okay, I haven't seen anyone in the last 10 seconds. They obviously must be doing something. Will ETC scatter it out? He does move in, but it's too little, too late. And now TFC doesn't have a play. If they had started the boss a good 5 to 8 seconds ago, they may have been able to finish it. But now they have to deal with pressure coming towards their top lane, which means SPT can get aggressive on the opposite boss.
Yeah, and that just goes to show a little bit of lack of experience with some of the macro decisions. As Kim taking a bit of damage, he's trying to walk away. There. Lucio breaking it down. Hunt. Stage dive coming in.
Stage dive on the right side. Wise being focused down. The Aegis will save him for now. Can he get out? He does bolt away. Pa chasing. Ostinger on the bottom right does finally kill off Bala, but Zagara is in the top lane, starting to set up for some pressure and, of course, get the experience. But TFC should be able to take a boss now. Yes, they move towards it in the bottom left. They need to get their own pressure on the battleground.
Yeah, they do. They're giving up quite a bit in this top lane, and when you get to late game, that could actually open up to be pretty devastating. Zagara does see Illidan gonna have to get out of there, and that is not a hero you want to deal with, but should be a pretty easy boss pickup here. No contest, but post 10, this is what we were talking about. They can take fights against this team, and Nidus, it's nice, but if you're not there for your team, 5v4 is a little tough.
The only thing I would like to see a little bit more here for SPT, because they obviously know what's coming in their way, is Malfurion needs to save his roots. The moment a hunt comes out, drop the root in that general area, drop the cleanse on your teammate who has been hit by the stun, and then just go for the disengage. Because every single time a Malfurion root has not connected with the Illidan engagement, which has allowed for a major chase and an Aegis to be forced.
Well, boss pushing in here in the bottom as we see posturing up. Not going to get a ton of value. I love the fact that Illidan is staying in the top lane. We can see him on the mini-map. It will allow, actually, they're going to rotate up. I would love to see him just clear out that lane, clear out the creep, and just limit Zagara's possibilities. And I think that they're going to use his... So his hunt has a range on it. Stage dive does not, so I think they're just swapping lanes there.
Yeah, it's a good call there. Just set yourself up in the further lane away from your teammates. You want to have Illidan in a spot where he can hunt in, as you mentioned, that range being small, so he's always there to assist in case there is a rotation that does occur. Y goes in for hard engaged on Pop Pop Pa. The hunt does pop out. There is the ice block. We need to see a root. There's the root on the stage dive. So far, we're having a solid play here by the Malfurion, but he eventually does get picked off. Tyrael was on the rotation down to help out, but he is too late. Kite just working on his escape here with his teammate. Zagara starts to get the push in the top left, but this is another tribute heading over to TFC.
Yeah, again, this is going to be the theme that is going to potentially turn this in favor of TFC. Zagara going to have to be careful. Again, every auto attack will lower the cooldown of that for Illidan, and you can see that Zagara is starting to hit that wall late game. Again, you can only push up so far, and as it continues to be cleared out, so long as Illidan clears that out, you're going to have a hard time getting that Zagara value.
And TFC's done a good job of making sure that the middle or bottom lane, or at least the lane that Zagara was not in, is pushed up. That way she just can't rotate out and keep them on the back foot and keep them constantly circling around. So solid play by TFC. They actually get 16 before their opponents, and SPT, it's kind of forced to have the Zagara to start doing Merc camps, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but hey, there it is. So Merc camps will now be pushing in the middle lane. Big tribute for TFC on the next tribute spawn. They grab this, they get cursed, which is another great way to nullify Zagara.
So much post 10 is going in favor of TFC. And Zagara, we saw her Nidus placed right beside that Merc camp. It ended up getting killed by a Merc camp. The bottom one died at the last team fight, the top one died due to Illidan, and it's very difficult to reestablish that positioning as the next tribute is here, as the hunt is in, and in comes stage dive as well.
Sanctification used oddly there, but hey, it saves his teammates here. Ossinger on the bottom right. Tyrael will use the Aldruin to get out with the Holy Ground, but suddenly now we're missing a couple of heroics that could be very helpful for SPT, as TFC will bring all 5 members to charge into the top right.
Well, SPT knows they cannot give this up as they're going to posture there. Illidan continuing to try and get attacks in so that he can use that hunt. The roots are down. Again, Holy Ground online now for Tyrael to help with the zoning, but this is going to break out into a full team fight. No doubt about it, Trixler. This is where the game could be made or broken for either team.
The poke is much better for SPT, honestly, except for the Gilnean cocktail, but as long as they spread out, they should be fine. The hunt does go in for an aggressive play, and they are just forced to retreat. SPT holds well here in the team fight. And when you look at the composition, really the most CC here for TFC is the hunt, and then power slide. And that's it. That's all they have here. So every time that hunt does not work out and SPT handles it well, they actually can turn around and go for a team fight because of those poke battles they can win.
All right, Devin on that back line. Ossinger going in on top of Malfurion as Twilight Dream missed, but Ossinger, the auto attack on his way out. A huge pickup there as Y going in, but stage dive coming in the backside.
HGC on the right, moves it for the power slide. The instant Aegis to save his teammate. The Holy Ground same time to make sure that there is no follow-up. Tyrael's attempting to move in for more aggressive plays, but now we have Y moving in, working in those auto attacks, and SPT will save the tribute, and they can grab the boss that has just spawned.
Yeah, and just like that, things are turning back in favor of SPT. They get that kill. They'll be able to obtain lane pressure, and most importantly, they keep that curse at bay at least for a little bit longer. So TFC still has some work to do.
I think you push with this. You have another 30 seconds before we have another tribute. You want to get at least this boss to the keep so you can start getting keep pressure there, and then you can peel off and maybe start setting up for the other boss, which should be up in the next 15 to 20 seconds.
This siege camp is a huge defense. They're not going to wait to cap that. That siege camp will meet the boss midway through lane. You don't get as much value out of it, but you also run the risk of a potential invade. So sometimes you pick it up early and just do it safely and then rotate back because your boss is now up. So you want to make sure that the potential for anything to go awry could be there. You'll get a little bit of value. Illidan will clean it up. So not a terrible decision, just a very safe one.
And now SPT's in a weird spot because of the tribute spawning in the top right. Illidan or HGC could peel off and maybe move towards that tribute, so they elect to walk away from the boss and look towards the tribute a bit more. A curse and a boss pushing at the same time could be deadly for SPT, so they move towards the objective, which opens up TFC to start bossing in the bottom left. Tyrael should have hung around there, though. In my opinion, they should have had him down there for the scary factor of the Holy Ground.
Twice it looked like he was going down there, and twice he went back up. You know, they're going to even this up. He's coming in. Nidus will get him there, but Malfurion not here. Illidan not here either. I'm actually a little bit surprised because they had Tassadar. Now the Hunt coming on the backside, and he is putting the pressure on. Crystal Aegis has been used. Sanctification out as well as Twilight Dream. Trying to keep them at bay as Pa having to walk away.
Both teams spreading out heavily here. Illidan's isolated on the right, Kite in the middle, just kind of floating around. Pa looking for an engage on the back right, but Illidan has finally fallen for TFC. SPT has done a great isolation technique there with the Holy Ground, and now they can work towards getting more kills. Here comes Y, moving forward with the multi-shot. Pa will retreat with the aid of Kim. 30 more seconds until TFC will have their Illidan. It is time to grab a boss.
Things starting to fall apart here, Trixler. TFC just cannot keep it together. You know, they're using the Hunt, they're making a lot of the right calls, but the minute these team fights come open, the double support is giving them all kinds of trouble. They are posturing up to defend here as the tribute is spawning right beside it. Whoever wins this will get a curse and will get a boss. Pa in a bad spot right now with the power slide over as Tyrael the first to fall.
That's a big deal because there's no Holy Ground, but ETC has been taken out, or Grayman has been taken out, which is a major portion of the damage for TFC. Illidan does spawn in the next 2 seconds, but it's nothing that you should be too worried about with roots being available for Malfurion. They should be able to continue to focus the boss. However, it has been leashed. So the next big important thing is the tribute. Grabbing this tribute, of course, awards the course to SPT, and they can soak multiple lanes here. There is a Hunt onto Zagara. Aegis does pop out. Sound barrier being used at the same time. Illidan looking to make a play, but Ball is starting to work on some auto attacks. Zagara on the back left is being bounced around like a pinball machine.
Yeah, pinball indeed, but we saw Tassadar fall on the backside, surprisingly. Illidan did not peel back, but now they are re-engaging. KT4 in deep. Nice detainment strike as ETC somehow walks away, but Ostinger is still going in. And not a kill. It is basically identical in terms of these trade-offs.
Okay, they start channeling now. They had to because Greymane just spawned. And if Illidan came in and delayed one more time, I think TFC walks away with this fight. So the curse has now been awarded to the SPT. Now, great back and forth action overall, but with Tassadar finally falling, TFC was forced to give away the curse. Now, where is the maximum grab here for SPT? They're going to start heading in the middle lane. This is a 5v4. They have to be careful. Instant silence though on Illidan. He's being focused down. However, the kill will not finally occur there as the Bala is unable to fully chase. Sanctification being used at the same time when Pa moves in. ETC being focused down.
KT4 not able to make it out alive. Pa trying to get out of there as well. Again, the curse is here, so they can afford to be aggressive. Still 30 seconds left on that. Zagara now up, has Nidus, so we'll be able to push her way up. Level 20, if you go endless creep, can now all of a sudden go from one end of the map to the other, and just like that, she's at the boss.
Oh, and SPT, clever play here. Realizing that they had a ton of minions in the top left, that they could actually move in towards the boss, and based on TFC responded, they could take away an advantage. If they had TFC come down to the boss to defend, they grabbed the keep in the top left from the minions. Now, TFC moved up to the top left to deal with the pressure coming so they could save their keep, which gives SPT a boss, and now they can just push this bottom left lane and potentially get a keep anyways.
All right, no endless creep, just happen to have some around there. Now, here's the thing, is that the top keep was defended. Now, 20 tier is here for TFC, which means they have a much better defense, but you don't want to be over-aggressive. I'm not saying you can give up a keep. You're likely going to, so you don't want to posture up too much. Look for Tyrael to put that holy ground in between the keep and that tower. If somebody tries to put posture up just a little bit, we'll look for an engage, but instead the re-engage here.
Big hunt, big sound barrier, and big stage dive, but a root stops all of it. One massive root there from our Malfurion player. Aegis used on the left side as Ariel is being focused down. Tassadar is going to take a decent amount of damage before his retreat. Austin here charges in once again. The root comes out, and they're going to focus him down. Illidan has fallen.
Yeah, Illidan has fallen, and they're still going in. Kite is so aggressive on that front line. They have the shields. The ball starting to take the shields on the core down. Got to be careful as he's going low, and again with double support. They go in sanctification there, going on the core.
Could this be the loss for TFC? It's looking just like it. 20%, 10%, all members focusing down the core, and SBT will deliver the dagger into TFC and knock them out of the tournament.
All I gotta say is that graphic that showed up there at the middle, or at the end, 135,000 hero damage for Vala. That is unreal.
We saw major damage there from Y, constantly working in the auto attacks, having brilliant support from both the Ariel and the Malfurion, consistently helping them out. Whenever there was a major engage from the hunt into the stage dive, there was always a tool there. Aegis to keep a member alive, the Malfurion root to handle the stage dive or the hunt as well. And then Zagara was always able to split push consistently. That composition falls apart if they don't hit those Aegis, if they don't hit those Malfurion roots, because Zagara was never there in the fight. So solid job by SBT and great macro and understanding and working together.
It just seemed like fool's gold almost a little bit. They hit around 11, 12, 13. They started to get a few picks. They hit post 10. They used hunt. They used stage dive. They got a few picks that they were looking for. Things started to look good, but they never let their foot off the gas. It's like you're coming up to a curve. You might want to hit the brakes a little bit. You know, you don't have to take this fight. You don't have to take it at 100 miles an hour. And they just kept pushing. Even that last fight at the end, you're even talent tiers. You're already giving up a keep. They thought it was an opportunity when they hit 20, and they just, every time they engaged, like post 16, post 20, it just didn't work out in their favor, and they didn't find the same opportunities. When they were in between that 11 to 15 to 16 mark, it seemed like they were looking for opportunities as opposed to, hey, we have a fight, we think we can dive in. And so instead of just picking apart their team, which they started to do, they just were like, let's just take a team fight. And those were not working.
They did not work out. In fact, just a little interesting information. The first 6 kills that we saw from SBT, 5 of them were Illidan. They controlled him so well with the Twilight Dream and all the control overall. Now, Misaka is going to be the MVP of that match, and I am inclined to agree. Solid play overall. He also played a different role for his team. He actually played an Ariel here instead of what you would normally see him on. Misaka, man, really bringing the hype for this tournament.
You go from Zeratul to Ariel, it's like, you know, whatever we need, we'll make it happen. But Malfurion, Ariel, I don't know how much more we'll see that, but we know that it's now possible, and China will do anything and everything differently than probably any team here. We've seen 3 Zagara games in one day. I haven't seen 3 Zagara games in probably the last, like, 6 months.
It's actually pretty insane to see Zagara being played so much and almost paying off almost every single one of their games. Of course, we did have the losses earlier. One in particular on Brax's holdout.
Wasn't Zagara's fault.
That shouldn't have been Zagara's fault. I agree with you. But that's going to conclude today, day number